I want to thank Rich and what a tremendous resource. And I don't just mean on a kind of a statewide level in terms of the work that he does, but as a parent of a special needs students, as my wife and I were relocating to Massachusetts 3 years ago, we really turned to Rich and the Federation to help us kind of sort through what our options are, what various communities had to offer, and what are the kinds of questions that we should be thinking about. So you've got a great resource here. I want to offer my personal congratulations to the Community Partnership Award winners. Neat work that you're involved in, and absolutely the kind of work that benefits children in your community, parents and families in your community. So my deep respect to all of you. I'd like to start by asking, and I believe we have some students with us today. Students, could you either stand or wave and folks, these are the most important people that we're here for today, the students. So do we have students with us? I know we have some. They may not be in the room with us. All right, so then I'm going to turn to the second most important people in this room, the parents of our students. Parents, please stand, and let's give ourselves a big round of applause, please. I'm really glad to have the opportunity to share a little information with you parents and with others who are here, and to the educators in the room. My gratitude always to the educators in Massachusetts who deliver high quality educational and social services to your children. We couldn't do it. We wouldn't be where we are in Massachusetts without the dedicated, committed, caring, high-quality educators that we have. I want to acknowledge my fellow commissioners, Commissioner Howe, Commissioner Reed, Commissioner Tewksbury, and the work that they do. I want to acknowledge staff that I have with me, staff from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. I don't know if John Bino's in the room yet. I haven't seen him. He will be here today. Marty Mitnock. Stand, Marty, please, and Madeline Levine. Stand up, Madeline. Sean Connolly. Sean. These are staff who make sure that in district by district across the Commonwealth that the special education programs are delivering the kind of services and quality that your children need and deserve. And they are running various breakout sessions, so I hope you look in your program for them because they're going to bring some really valuable information to you. We also have, and there's always a risk of overlooking folks, but Peggy O'Hara over here and Jenny Dunkley. Why don't you stand up, and Peggy, and we have a number of advisory councils that advise the State Board of Education and the department. Peggy chairs the Parent and Community Advisory Committee, and Jenny chairs the Special Education Advisory Committee. So thanks to the work that you do. Rich asked me to share with you some of the developments, some of the issues that are ripe right now in education. And so I'm going to spend a few minutes giving you a very quick overview of a number of areas that you should be having your eye on. You should be keeping your eye on. This is a very exciting time in education. There's a lot of movement, a lot of energy, a lot of talk about how to build on the strengths of the system and improve the weak areas of the system. But it's also a very daunting time in our country, as Rich referenced in his comments, because we are in a very difficult fiscal time as we speak. And many of you know that personally from your own circumstances, your own lives, your own jobs, and so forth. We are one of 12 states that has received a substantial federal grant called the Race to the Top Award. How many of you have heard of the Race to the Top? Okay. So we are one of 12 states that received an award. It's a $250 million award, $250 million, spread over 4 years. And we have about 2/3 of our school districts in the state that are participating in the work in Race to the Top. And the work boils down to this. It boils down to making sure that the curriculum in our schools ensures that students are ready for success after they leave high school. Ensures whether they want to go on to college, whether they want to go into a career path. That's first and foremost in what we've signed up to do, to make sure that the program of studies that our students experience prepares them for success after high school, number one. Number two, to make sure that we have the greatest teachers and administrators in our schools that we can possibly have. And that means that we have to do a better job supporting them, and we have to do a better job of providing them with feedback on where they're doing well and where there's room for improvement. So we have initiatives in this area that are upgrading teacher evaluation processes to provide teachers with better quality feedback, as well as administrators, but at the same time to provide them with the kind of supports, kind of curriculum resources, kind of professional development that will let them be as good as they can be. And finally, the work involves being aggressive where we have schools that are not serving students well, where we have schools that are underperforming, where student performance is lagging year after year, where the kind of learning that's taking place for our students is not where it needs to be for our students to be successful once they leave high school and college. So we have about 250 school districts, a little more than 250 school districts in Massachusetts that are participating in our Race to the Top grant, and you may or may not be sending your students to school in a district that's participating in the work. But that's a very broad level overview of that effort. Second effort that Massachusetts has participated in is that we have upgraded our requirements for English language arts and mathematics, two core subjects. We call them curriculum frameworks, curriculum standards. You'll hear them referred to with both of those terms. What they are is at a very high level. It's not a day-by-day curriculum, but at a very high level, it's what kind of skills, what kind of content, what kind of knowledge, what kind of abilities do students need to be successful at the next level. And for the K-12 system, that means that by the end of 12th grade, what kind of skills, understandings, abilities, content is going to prepare a student well for opportunities after high school. And then we've mapped that backward all the way down to kindergarten and actually to preschool in Massachusetts in terms of the kinds of expectations in English language arts and in mathematics that are required. That work, which culminated in December with the State Board of Education formally adopting new revised curriculum frameworks in those subjects. That work was informed by a multi-state effort. More than 40 of the 50 states participated over the last 2 years in developing a set of curriculum standards, curriculum expectations, that is referred to as the Common Core State Standards effort. How many, just out of curiosity, how many of you have heard the term Common Core State Standards? Okay. So this is pretty exciting work, and it gives us some really good guidance. It gives our teachers some really good guidance as to the kind of work that should be happening across the curriculum in terms of reading, writing, speaking, and listening skills, and in terms of mathematics skills to prepare students well for opportunities after high school. And so we will be working over the next several years, we've already started, with your school districts in helping your teachers, your administrators, make sure that the current curriculum in your schools transitions to be consistent with the new state frameworks in English language arts and mathematics. That work has already started and will continue for the next couple of years, and we're very much committed to supporting your teachers and your administrators with curriculum resources, with model units of study, so that they're not on their own trying to figure this out. A third area that I'd like you to be aware of is a multi-state consortium that Massachusetts participates in that's received a very large federal grant to develop new assessments that are consistent with the Common Core state standards and a new assessment system. So Massachusetts is very much engaged with about 25 other states right now in what's called the Partnership for the Assessment of Readiness for College and Career. And what we're aiming at is building a new generation of assessments that allows us to assess not just in a traditional mode where at the end of the year students sit down in a 1 or 2 hour period and respond to a set of questions, but to expand what we're able to assess by building in some components throughout the year, that components of the assessment that look less like a traditional test with items that students respond to, but look more like an assignment or a set of tasks that students are asked to perform during the course of the year. So we're very excited about that. That's at the very front end of development. That's a 4-year process. The federal grant allows us to work on this for the next 4 years. We're very excited about that. Now, let me use that as a transition. It turns out that I chair the governing board for this multi-state assessment consortium, and I traveled midweek this past week to California and met with the California State Board of Education, because California is in the process of making a decision about joining this consortium. And the reason I bring that up to you is to bridge into a budget discussion. California, arguably, is a state that's probably facing a more severe fiscal crisis than virtually any other state in the country. Now, we in Massachusetts, by virtue of our laws and constitutions, have to live within our means. We can't run a state government on a deficit. We can't borrow to pay for today and delay the payments down to the future. We have to live within our means. There are other states, California being one of them, that do not have that provision and that have over time, in fact, mortgaged the future to pay for the present. And right now in California, just to give you a sense of this, and this is very much active and in process between the governor and the legislature, they're looking at the potential for an $18 billion deficit in the state budget, and school systems, depending on how the legislature and the governor reconcile that, might be facing substantial cuts in funding in their state aid. We are in a very different place in Massachusetts. I use this as contrast because while our challenges are not trivial, I don't want you walking out of here feeling as though our circumstances are dire, because compared to most states, we are in much better shape. Now, the governor, as Rich mentioned, has proposed a budget. The process for the budget in Massachusetts is that the governor proposes initially, and then the House first, and then the Senate and our legislature then take up their own process of looking at what's feasible for a budget next year. The governor's budget, I would argue, was very supportive of the K-12 sector. Rich mentioned the funding for special ed specifically, what's called the circuit breaker account, which the governor has funded at a level that's substantially higher than last year. He also has raised the funding for the main source of dollars for your local school districts, which is referred to as Chapter 70 in his budget. But I need to tell you that that's just the beginning of this process, because we already have very strong signals from the House of Representatives in Massachusetts that we are not going to see the House budget reflect those levels of funding. We have a number of concerns among legislators about whether some of the figures that the governor's budget was based on will hold up going into next year. The governor's budget assumes some substantial savings in Medicaid, on the Medicaid line, and assumes some new sources of revenue, which the House is not convinced are appropriate to assume will be in place. And so this is a long way from finished. We have a long way to go. I do think on the positive side that there is a strong conviction among our legislators, both in the House and the Senate, for supporting K-12 education. I want you to know that the State Board of Elementary and Secondary Education, in the budget proposal that was submitted to the governor, made as their very top priority funding for our school districts, both in terms of that Chapter 70 line, the main foundation funding, as well as in terms of the special ed funding, what is called the circuit breaker funding. So keep your eye on this. This will get confounded by the federal picture. Now, even though federal dollars are a relatively small percentage of the total amount we spend on K-12 education. And by the way, we spend about $13 billion a year in Massachusetts on K-12 education statewide. That's from both local sources, the revenue that your towns raise locally, the state funding, and the federal funding. The federal funding is less than 10% of that. But nonetheless, it's an important contribution to the funds we have to work with. And as you know, if you've been reading the papers, we're in a big kind of face down between certainly the Republican-controlled House of Representatives in Congress and the President. We'll see how that fares in the Senate. There's a strong push in the House of Representatives to cut domestic spending, which includes important lines that our school districts depend on, Title I funding, special ed funding. So this has a long way to go. The upside of all of this is that in Massachusetts we are in better shape than most other states at this point in time. But I want you to be realistic. There are going to be some real budget pressures on your school districts, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that this doesn't become a tug of war among folks for who's going to get the dollars, because it has the potential to pit special ed and regular ed. And I'm bound and determined to not make this a battle and not make this contentious and not make this an either-or proposition. We're all going to have to find a way to live within our means and provide high-quality services that our students deserve. Let me, thank you. I'll do that. So a couple other things, and I'm going to wrap up. There is a new bullying law in place, and we've created a model bullying prevention and intervention plan. We've provided guidance specifically for special education students. This has to be an effort not only of special educators, but of regular educators in ensuring that the kind of climate school by school is supportive and civil among students. I have to tell you that the federal government is very tuned into this at this point. On Thursday, the White House held a conference on bullying. There was a strong strand in that conference on special ed students and bullying. So stay tuned to that. And there are some sessions today on that. If you're interested specifically, you should attend some of those sessions. Let me finish with this. And I had a number of other items, but you've been sitting a long time and you're waiting for your keynote speaker. We're very committed to parent and family engagement. We're very much exploring what role the state can play in supporting improved family and parent engagement at the local level. I mentioned our advisory groups who are working on this. The State Board of Education is very tuned into this and very interested in how to move that agenda forward, support and promotion of parent and family engagement. Finally, I'm very committed to serving all of the students of the Commonwealth with the highest quality education that we can. And I have my eye both on the service, provision of services, and the effectiveness of services. And so this is a conversation that we are going to need your help in over the next few years. The next few years are going to be, we're going to have to tighten our belts. So for me, part of the discussion here is how do we provide high quality, highly effective services, services that prepare our students well for the world they're going to live in, while at the same time paying attention to cost containment. We cannot avoid that. We have to live within our means. The fiscal constraints are not going away. So for me, the conversation going forward for the next couple of years is one of high-impact services, services that address our students' needs, but at the same time keeping our eye on cost containment and making sure that we can afford what we're providing to our students. We need your support in this effort. We need your active involvement, school by school, district by district, at the state level. It's my pleasure to serve you and to head a department and to be with my fellow commissioners, to be here to make sure that the state's in a position to best ensure that your students receive the kind of education and support that they need as they enter adulthood eventually, that they're ready for success and opportunity in their lives ahead. Thank you very much. My deep respect to all of you.